Welcome everyone to this Awareness Podcast, Living in Oneness. And today I'm here with my friend Simone Anliker from the Global Dyad Meditation Project, and the facilitator of something called Spiritual NVC, and a whole bunch of other things. Hi, Simone.
Hi, Cyndi. I'm so happy to be here. It's just a pleasure to be here with you, as you're very dear to me and to the project Global Dyad Meditation.
So, and I've got chills. Simone and I were just talking because almost for the entire year we've been, I asked her even before the beginning of 2022, will you be a guest? And she said yes. And then there was a delay, and now we're here. And up until this morning, I was very clear on our conversation. And then I woke up this morning and I stepped into this great mystery. So there's a couple of things before I hand things over with my first question. Number one, there's this invitation I'd like to give to you. If you are listening, if you tuned into this podcast from wherever you are, take it as an invitation. And however possible, pay attention. Don't just keep it on in the background. Perhaps take a few minutes now and just stop everything else that's going on and know that this is for you. Yeah, so that's number one. And number two, allow yourself to be surprised. You may, set the intention to learn something new and something useful. But past that, let go of all the other expectations about what you might learn or what you may need to live your highest and great life, and just see what happens. And Simone came into my life. We were trying to figure it out with some friends of mine. It's been about 2 years. It was a little over 2 years ago that I was first introduced to something called the Dyad, and a friend taught me what it was, and everything inside of me lit up. And my friend Ann didn't have time to do Dyads with me every day, and somehow it was one of those pulls. I needed to find a way to explore this process, this tool. And so Google as my guide, I simply went to the computer and asked, how can I access this? And that's how I found the Global Dyad Meditation Project, and then Simone. And I just kept saying yes since then. But with that being said, Simone, it would be awesome if you take a few minutes and just introduce yourself to this audience, and whatever it is you feel inspired to share about your work and who you are and how the work found you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So, listening to you, I was just becoming aware where I am right now. And it is a lot of, I think it tells a lot about who I am, because I moved in April. I moved here. I'm in Switzerland right now. That's where I was born. I grew up here. I went to school here, and I love to travel. So 1.5 a year, I'm also abroad, mostly in Mexico right now. But a year ago, when I came back from Mexico, I started to teach right here next door. It's a retreat center, which I was kind of called to go there. And while I was teaching there, I did some writing with my, as part of this intuitive writing. Maybe we talk a little bit about this later on. And in the writing, I received the invitation to move to that place where I live now. And it was kind of astonishing, but also very, it made so much sense, because that's a power spot here in Europe or in Switzerland. And it's actually where the saint of Switzerland, Niklaus von der Flue, he lived here in, I think, 1300 something. So he had his family and people come here. He left his family and lived down at the river. And when I was here, I could really sense this, I call them celestial beings being around us. And it's a very wonderful place here. And for just that reason, I followed the call. And I'm now exactly in the house I'd like to. I saw this, I said, oh, that would be perfect. So as things unfolded, and I was more or less trusting. I thought I had to do a lot of things too, but actually I didn't. It just turned out that I happened to be, and I'm just really, really happy. I'm so grateful just to be where I am. And that's part of who I grew into, trusting my inner guidance, trusting that when I'm open and when I'm just allowing things to happen, things turn out exactly the way they are meant to turn out. And there is not a lot of effort in it. There's not a lot of planning around it. It's kind of just following this. I wasn't like that when I was younger. I say my earlier days, I grew up in a family of with 6 siblings, and I went to school. I studied the law, so I became not a lawyer, but I became I became a lawyer, but not in the sense of working in court, but just I had what we called a law degree. And then for reasons, I got into teaching with adults, and I switched. And after many years of having a spiritual life on my in my background, and having a spiritual teacher, basically one main spiritual teacher from India, I got into nonviolent communication. And again, I was guided there. I wasn't looking for it. It happened. I was looking for something completely different. And here was a lady, and she knew what I was looking for. And she said, well, you will have to look into that. And I then started reading the book of Marshall Rosenberg. And it was the first sentence I read that I knew, I'm home here. Because what I learned through nonviolent communication was that I found a way that helped me to be very practical with my spiritual understanding. So it was like, I mean, if someone tells you love other people how you love yourself, how to do this, I didn't know that. I mean, it's just a concept, but no one really showed it to me. And when I started with nonviolent communication, I realized that Marshall Rosenberg, who was the founder of this nonviolent communication, he gave me a tool to how to connect with myself and how to connect with other people. And the tool was basically through human needs. And at the time, I was just really happy to realize, well, I have needs and everyone else has needs. And that's a way how we can communicate and connect. So I haven't read through the whole book. Maybe I was through about a third, and I already knew I want to become a teacher. I want to really know how this works. I want to teach this. And I have this very clear understanding. I'm teaching what I need the most myself. Still today, I'm still, when I'm sharing, when I'm teaching, I remind myself of so many things. I tend to forget, and because I'm there and people are there to listen, I'm just really happy about this. So also when I do trauma work, which then after a couple of years, I realized with my own story, I wasn't aware of that I carried unattended trauma inside of my body, my system. until I found myself in a relationship which was just really, really difficult. And nothing I learned before was there to help me to manage this. And then I need more tools. And so I, again, from my own inner struggles, I would say at the time, I wanted to know more. And so I was looking what would help me the most. And then I started to become a NARM, neuroaffective relational model practitioner, learning from Dr. Lawrence Heller, who was specialized on developmental trauma. And only by learning, I realized, oh my God, there's so much inside of me I wasn't even aware of. I thought trauma is this really bad thing that happens to people, like this huge thing, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that, but it can be little ongoing things in our history, in our biography. And so I realized, well, most every one of us is carrying trauma in our system, but a lot of people are not aware of it. And the way how we realize it is we are growing up and then we find ourselves in relationship, in either work relationship or private relationship, personal relationship. And it's just someone is there and I'm just triggered by some situations or some people, and not just triggered in a superficial way, but it goes to my core. So it goes to some depths of who I think I am, not so much of who I am, but who I think I am. And it's kind of shaking me to the core. And I just realized very many of us are so. So I just added this in and became a trauma practitioner and added other tools, which I found really helpful. And part of my healing journey, and that's why I'm bringing in the trauma. And it's also, who I am, who I became. Yes, I am the one who has chosen to be here. I chose my family. I'm very convinced about this. And I also chose those difficult situations I find myself in, and it's part of my spiritual path. So part of my healing journey was meeting Robert Gonzalez, very dear friend who passed away last year. And he had also a different approach to nonviolent communication than Marshall Rosenberg. He called it living compassion. And he created this very beautiful tools of healing and connecting and being truthful and authentic. And one part I learned from him were the Dyads. And he himself was a student of Charles Berner and learned the Enlightenment technique, and then combined the Dyads with nonviolent communication. And that's how I got into this way of meditating with each other. And again, we were not in Boulder, we were in Whistler in Canada together at an international intensive training. And I went back to Mexico. And in a Dyad, I had this, I call them downloads. You have to bring the Dyads to the world. It was end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And I thought, wow, what? It's not my product, but I just knew I had to bring the Dyads online. And I talked to Robert, and he was really excited about it. And then I started this project. I didn't know. I mean, I knew Zoom, but I didn't know how to handle it. But I was guided. Within 3 weeks, everything was set up. So we started with the Dyads. And it's part again of who I am. I believe that we're guided. I believe that I'm guided. I believe that when I do have downloads or ways of direction, I just have to follow them, and it always turns out the right way, when I also not only follow what I think like personality traits and think, oh, I want this to be big and huge. And of course, this was in the beginning. I saw millions of people doing this. And I thought, well, now I just counted. Now we're in year number 6, and we started with one diet. And now we have like up to 3 or 4 diets a day. But it's not about me, it's not, of course, it's also me. I'm the one who is starting to manifest. But it's much more of just trusting that there is a guidance. And when we're able to follow the guidance, it's always turning out well. So that's kind of who I am. I love to be guided. It's not always nice. It's not always that I'm like, oh, yes, wonderful. But also trusting. And then, just really trusting that I'm not able to do the work by myself. There's people coming like you. Suddenly you were there, or like Yvonne, who then like 2 years ago was there helping the website to just be a little bit more modernized. And so just people are coming because I'm truly, truly convinced that what comes through us is meant to come through us. If we are not open for it, it will find other channels. So the work is going to be done anyhow, or what the help we receive from inner circles, just to guide us into a more peaceful, more connected world, is happening. If I'm open to it or not, it's nice if I'm open to it, then I'm more consciously being part of it. And it feels satisfying also to be one of the instruments where it comes through. So that was a long answer to who I am. Maybe it's just a little part of it.
It was beautiful. And while I was listening to you, I got lots of questions, but I was just reminded there is a big chunk of our audience that are students of Course in Miracles. And just by definition, A Course in Miracles teaches that we heal through relationship. And because that's the only way, according to A Course in Miracles, that's a great way. Let's put it that way. That's more true for me. It's a very powerful way to see what we've hidden from ourselves, or what's hiding in our body, mind, personality, that without relationship we never see. And you're pointing to that within the trauma work, just lit that up for me. So,
and it's nice that you bring in, that's really nice that you bring in the Course in Miracles, because I remember I was just wondering, how did I get, I tried to read, and that was more a trying, it was more a mental, and it didn't work for me. And then again, through the help of the universe, I was guided. My entry to the Course in Miracles was through Gary Renard, reading his something about
disappearance of the universe.
The disappearance of the universe. And the sentence which I took from it, which was for me the key opener, the door opener, was, or I don't remember the sentence, but it's something, the question I took out of, what if separation never happened? And for me, when I read this, or when I got this concept, because I felt it, if you are into nonviolent communication, if you are into connection, I also believe, at least it's for me, there is somehow a belief that I'm disconnected. There's some, maybe it's not even a belief, maybe it's I'm convinced. And and also the disconnection from the divine. And when I had this, I remember this so vividly, what if separation never happened? Because it's just something I tell myself, it's something and it was like, wow, what if separation really never happened? It opened a whole new other world. And that doesn't mean I'm always there, but it's just something broke in this view of how I held the world. So it's nice. Yeah, it's really beautiful to have that reminder.
Broke open. I like, as you said, broke. That's what I heard. Just broke open, and I could feel my body expanding. The other part of this, as I was listening to you, is just this space of accepting that the separation never happened. And so much of what we're doing here is undoing the beliefs that it had, because without separation, there is no body. There are no relationships with others. There's nothing to feel unsafe about. There's nothing to feel unworthy about, because we're all the formless or consciousness or whatever. And so this acceptance of the great mystery that we aren't who we think we are. And then after that, my experience in listening to you, it feels the same. We say yes to that, and then our script or the journey of our lives, each one of us who holds this belief that separation happened, which it didn't, has our own kind of criteria or script. I don't even know the right word back. Following guidance.
It brings me to when we started before the call, we talked a little bit also about how I like the definition of trauma, which I take from Gabor Mate, and he says trauma isn't what happened to us. Trauma is the way how we react to what happened to us. It's not what happened, but our reaction or the way we deal with it. And then he continues and he says, the trauma actually is the disconnection from our essence, or disconnection from source, or maybe that's also another word. Separation and trauma is very, just comes to me, it's probably the same. And yes, in one sense we can say it doesn't really happen when we go into the course, but being here as a human being, it is part of our reality, and it's also part. That's why I really like to see what our experiences we have is part of our healing journey and also part of our spiritual path. So reconnecting to who we are, reconnecting to source energy, reconnecting to the divine is part of our healing journey and our spiritual path. So they are really much connected to each other. And yes, in one sense, it never happened. And yes, in another sense, it did happen, because it is, in a sense, also a reality for us. And just moving through these experiences and healing in the sense of becoming whole again. That's my understanding of healing, becoming whole again.
So what I'm seeing now is that this conversation, which in the minutes before we hit the record button, we left to the great mystery or to inner guidance to lead. It feels like we've created this beautiful foundation that says, here's the truth, what if separation never happened? And if we hold that as a groundwork, then we know there's a lot of different paths to get us back there, to heal the trauma, to be with what's going on in our world, and to follow intuition. I'm inspired now to talk about some of the specific tools that you offer and are working with. right now. The tools, and it's interesting wanting to say it this way. And the hairs, by the way, are standing up on my arm right now. So I know that we're touching something beautiful. Let's leave it. So many of us get lost in thinking the tools are the truth. And so I just kind of felt like saying it out loud. These are tools that lead us, that allow us to let go of what's not true so that we could experience the truth or the beauty or the love. So the tools are phenomenal and the processes are phenomenal. Just like it's not the Course in Miracles, or it's not this Indian guru, or it's not the Christian church, or whatever your current tool or process is. Even in your introduction, you pointed at how, inspiration, guidance led you to all these different teachings that are now coming alive in you in different ways. With that, again, now it feels really cool to talk about some of these processes.
And I like what you say. I like what you say. What are there right now? Because even when I see how the diet work started and how I started with the diet, of course there is a format. We have we are two people. See, maybe we just go there and explain a little bit what the diets are. Like two people meeting each other either online or in real life when we're together. It's always a group process. Online through Zoom is possible now because we have the breakout sessions. We can meet as two people. And then there used to be an inquiry or a question. And I say there used to be because in the meanwhile, we changed already here. So to make it easier, we have an inquiry, we have a question. For example, it could be, I also worked once, what if separation never happened? And then we offer this to our partner in the diet. And for 5 minutes, the partner is pondering on it, takes the invitation, the question, the inquiry into the whole system. I normally close my eyes, I let it sink in, and then I wait for a moment, and then I see what emerges from it. And it is not a dialogue, it is a meditation process. So the person, the partner who is offering me the invitation is there, present, without interacting. So I'm not nodding, I'm not going, I'm not commenting on anything, I'm not, and I don't even use the word, the name of the other person. If I would give you the invitation, I wouldn't say Cyndi, I would just give you the invitation as it is. And then you take the question in and then you ponder on it. And different to a silent meditation, you would then speak out what arises in you. And you let me be part of your exploration. And then we have a bell after 5 minutes. There is a moment of acknowledgement. Both of us would say thank you. And then we switch. And when I have asked you or given you the invitation, then you would give me the invitation. And then you are there present for me. And I'm the one who is going inside and pondering and speaking out into that space we share. And this whole back and forth goes for 40 minutes. So we have 8 times we switch. And what's the beauty in this meditation together is by your sheer presence, I'm able to stay with what I want to ponder on. So your being present with me helps me to go deeper inside and stay focused, which very many of us know. The moment we sit down for a single or silent meditation, at the moment we want to meditate, the mind goes so everywhere else, and we're at breakfast or at our next meeting, and it's just the mind normally goes nuts. because it's really difficult to just to stay focused on really being in the contemplative mode, and having someone here with me, just being there present. As the saying is, when two of us are together, there's like a third one. We're not just there, there's someone more here in our field, and that helps me to really stay with what I'm pondering. And it's just really beautiful because it opens up, it helps me to focus, to go inside. And the invitation or the question is more like a door opener. It's not meant to answer a question, but it's just helping me to focus, setting the intention, and then I will see what happens inside of me. And I'm always surprised what comes up. And even though I might hear the same invitation over and over again, what emerges is always different. There might be similarities, but normally it's always different because it's another moment in time. It's another present moment in time, which is different than the moment just before. So that's the Dyad meditation. And what I did Dyad meditation for many years. As I said, I learned them from Robert Gonzalez. And there the invitation had a different purpose. Now, as it's evolving also on global Dyads, we sometimes just take one word. And it could be, for example, it could be one of my favorite is stillness. Just stillness. And then even as I say stillness now, as I speak out stillness, there's already something happening. I notice there's already something happening in the space of the two of us. And even though I'm still speaking, stillness inside of me grows bigger. Stillness, what I experience in the space between the two of us, grows bigger. And even though there is talking on top of it, there's something that happens in my heart and in my belly. So that's what's happening. Kind of the word stillness unfolds while I'm still speaking. And so I don't even need a question about what is stillness or how does stillness live in you, or being in stillness could also be a word. So it's, or two words. It's whatever is the quality of that word that conveys. What's the best word? Maybe I don't think energy is the right word, but that conveys, the word wisdom comes up to me. Conveys a truth, conveys a wisdom that comes from the inside, much more than coming from my head. It's beyond my head. It's coming from a completely different space. So just by the word stillness and having you present with me, listening to what while I'm speaking, also exploring, there is an opening to an inner space where stillness is much bigger than I can kind of think about it. And that's the beauty of it. It really connects me. The Dyad helps me to connect to those inner spaces. I'm also very positive that there is physiological things that happens in our body. So I'm very positive that brain waves slow down, that the whole breathing and the whole neuro and my nervous system calms down. So I'm going more into a place of balance and homeostasis, and talking with the heart mass science, coming more and more into coherence of heart and brain, and also coherence between the two of us. And probably even, I imagine that there's even coherence when people are listening to that they probably notice that they are slower in their breathing. And what I'm doing is actually just speaking from that place of stillness. And it's not that I want to do this, it just happens. And it happens with, it's a skill building process. So it happens with practice.
So just from a practical standpoint, before we get into the adding the intuitive writing, I discovered the Global Dyad Meditation Project just about 2 years ago. I learned it, I played with it for a while, and I became a host. I'm there at least once a day, except for today, because I'm with you, and I would have normally been there. So just in general, I estimate I've done over 1,000 Dyads since I discovered the project in at least 30 different countries. It really is a global connection. I wanted to just say to everyone, there's a link wherever you're listening to us from. There's a link to Simone's website. So the Global Dyad Meditation Project is always free. There are rooms open 3, sometimes 4 times a day, where there is a host that helps set the dyads up and gives a little instruction. There are orientations a couple times a month that Simone asks you to attend to get the outline of how to do the dyads. After that, it is a practice sinking in to help one listen, both to one's inner guidance as well as to others, to listen without response, without setting up a response. It's a practice to listen with a soft, open, allowing concentration. And it really is, I keep saying practice because even after 1,000 trips into this dyad space, I am now seeing how easy it is to get distracted and not be in the present moment through judgment or to-do lists or physical sensations that pull you away. And I'm noticing that it's becoming easier and easier and easier for me to be in that kind of non-judgmental, open, present moment. And it does shift everything. So if this idea of a global dyad is something that lights you up, there is that link. Go ahead and explore, come to an orientation. You'll find me there, along with what I will now tell you is beautiful, loving, open-hearted people. I've done dyads in Vietnam and in a kitchen table in Tokyo and all over Europe and Mexico and South America and Costa Rica and the United States and Canada. Like I said, New England, Australia and New Zealand, and I was keeping track for a while. So I got up to like 26, 27 countries, and then I stopped counting. So there's that. So the next thing that was introduced, it'll be 2 years in December, is merging the standard dyad practice with intuitive writing. And I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yes, the intuitive writing again. I was wondering for quite some years how it used to be like the word channeling I was interested in, and I didn't really find myself open to whoever offered it. But then it came to me through Lee Harris, and I started to do he calls it channeling, but then I thought, well, I'm not connected to the word channeling. But then I found, I like to call this intuitive writing. And what intuitive writing is, or we also call it writing dyads, it's just a normal, ordinary dyad of 40 minutes with the invitations we were talking about. And then once the diet is finished, the host is offering an invitation to write on. And one of the original invitation is, what does the divine want me to know? Or what does my soul, or what does my higher guidance? You can use whatever you'd like to want me to know. And then we will be writing for 15 minutes. So the host will give you the invitation, and then people stay online. They don't have to stay the camera on, but they stay still in this room we offer here. And then everyone is writing for about 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, we come back together, and then we will be put into the same breakout again with the person we just did the diet. And then we are sharing what we have received. And this again came to me, I think it was probably one of the online intensive trainings I was offering, when I realized, even, and that's to name and to acknowledge. If someone is new to the diet, it can be actually quite challenging, because we have never learned, we're not used to express kind of the most deepest things from our heart into a space with a foreigner. We're not used to that. That's why it's so important to keep to stick to the rules or to the guidelines we have, to not interacting, to not comment. So that's the first step, to dare to speak out what's so dear to us, to just listen and then speak out. And then I realized, well, that's the first big thing. But then I realized, normally we don't share if we are connected with our divine love or light or wisdom. And we do receive, and I trust that many of us do receive this guidance, especially also when they start to write. And it's different than automatic writing. I used to do automatic writing. I was bored, because the thing why I was bored, I realized it's all coming through my mind. And I was writing pages and pages, and I was just, didn't really mean anything to me. This intuitive writing is different. There is the link is, what does my higher self, what does the divine, what does something that is bigger than me want me to know? So I'm going into a dialogue with the divine itself, and I'm just reading Teresa of Avila's biography. And what she is doing, she calls it prayer. And she's very much actually doing the same, going into a direct connection, and then is writing what comes through. And that's what we're doing. We're not thinking, we're writing what comes through. And then the next thing is, wow, this is so private. This is so personal message to me. But that's not my experience. When we started, and that again, I was just having that insight, we have to share this. We have to share this with each other, to read out loud what we just received. And the beauty is that when we are sharing, we realize it just happened to come through you as a channel, but it could have just been me as a channel, or it could have just be someone else, because it's very, I say it's very impersonal, personal, or personal, impersonal, whatever we want to say. This message is from the inner circle, is not just for me. There are certain messages that are very just directly to me when I ask for really concrete guidance in some specific matter. But very often, what comes through you, what comes through me, is not just for me. It's just really also for a bigger audience to hear. So we have to get into the daring also to share and trust what's coming through. And just listening to people what they receive, it's so heartwarming, so heart opening, and it's so soothing and so nurturing to have your message read to me. And that's what I invite people. If, for example, if Cyndi and me would being in a diet, and then we do the intuitive writing together, and then we meet again in the breakout session, what Cyndi was receiving, she reads to me, and I very often close my eyes and I listen to the message Cyndi is offering me, as if the divine is speaking directly to me again. And the same, whatever came through me, I'm reading out loud, and Cyndi is listening as if it is spoken directly to her. And I say as if, it is actually not as if, very often. And we had also big laughs about this, Cyndi, that sometimes we receive messages because we're in some kind of a turmoil or something that's going on in the daily life, and here we receive a message that helps us and gives us guidance for the day. So it's just really a beautiful way to connect even more within and with the divine, and then also share this to the world.
So the global dyad with intuitive writing began as a 2 or 3 week experiment around the holidays of 2020. And there were a group of us that decided we couldn't let it go. So there is a room open, at least one room open every day, 7 days a week for this process. And I'm there 99 out of 100 days. It's what I call my spiritual home group. And the only thing I'd love to add is I get the biggest joy. Number one, the writing for me is like priming the pump. So my writing has changed significantly through this process. Number two, I get the biggest joy because many of us who make this our practice discover that when we read our writing out loud, it doesn't feel like us who have, it's very obvious that the writing that's coming through is coming from the heart, or coming from truth, or coming from somewhere that bypasses the conditional mind. So it's an absolutely extraordinary process. And once you go through the orientation and you hit Simone's website and all that stuff, the rooms are just open. After orientation, you get the links and the schedule, and you're invited to come. So I'm looking at the time. This is crazy because we could talk for hours, but I want to open the space because the other thing that I know that is a huge part, of what you're offering the world right now is spiritual NVC and how all that relates. So I'm going to just hand it over to you for whatever you want to share about this these gorgeous processes in the program.
Yes, and I'm still, about the name, I'm kind of still looking for another name for it. But at the moment, it's called Spiritual NVC. It's on the basis of nonviolent communication, in the sense of we have 4 steps in nonviolent communication. This is observation without judgment, and then feelings and needs, and also requests. And when I developed my program, I'm going along these 4 parts of observation, feelings, and needs, and requests, or another way of manifesting. And I fill it with my understanding, what worked for me, what helped me on my path of healing. And so the first part, which is this observation, and it helps me to, how do I deal with difficult situations, and how do I really become an observer? So I'm using different threads which helping me, and I combine new practices which just help me to really coming into a space of observing and becoming the observer. And again, connecting it with A Course in Miracles or my spiritual studies. I mean, we hear that, but how do we do that? How do we become the observer? And there are practices that help to really lay back. And here I connect with Michael A. Singer's work of kind of the untethered soul. And he talks about exercises. But what I like to do is when I hear something like this, I like, oh, and how do I do it? How can I make this accessible for me? So I did create an exercise that helps me to really lay back. And one of his teachings is relax. When we're in struggle, relax and release. Relax and release. And especially when people are mourning, that's the best thing. It's kind of, they are waves and we're just going back. And there is a way of just relaxing and releasing and becoming the observer and seeing what's happening. So that's, for example, one of the parts. And when we go to the feeling part, there is what I bring in all the trauma work. And part of, I think, my mission, because it was helpful for me, is to be trauma informed. So to have an understanding, what is it, what we're talking about when we're talking about trauma, and realizing there's different ways of trauma, and that we basically, everyone, just being human being on this planet means we are carrying trauma in our system. And to have an understanding, what are we talking about? And then also to be trauma, we call that trauma sensitive or trauma aware. And that means when we react in ways, and we have the saying in German, we're making an elephant out of a mosquito. So it's kind of, there is a small trigger and we're making a huge thing out of it, a whole story about it. We be very positive that we are connected to biography and to trauma, and that we're looking through a lens of trauma, and we're not really in the present moment, because trauma keeps us from being in the present moment. And again, when we do all these practices, these spiritual practices, we want to be in the present moment. And Lawrence Heller says, well, it's like Eckhart Tolle says, nothing can happen to us that is big enough to not be in the present moment. That can be really painful for people who carry trauma, because they struggle so much. They really try, and this trying even prevents them. But for whatever reason, there's still wounding there, and this wounding needs to be addressed. And so again, there's gentle exercises and bringing in the havening touch. The havening touch is another beautiful, beautiful way of connecting with oneself and giving myself a safe space and helping my nervous system to calm down. And so having this trauma information, trauma sensitivity, and also with healing, we're also aware of or becoming more trauma integrated. That means there's still something in our biography that happened. And yes, if it's like a wound, if I touch it, it can be still painful. But with healing, I become more integrated. I know, oh, here is trauma at work, or oh, this one is painful. So I learn how to deal with it. And it's, in my understanding, it's not. We have that hope that once everything is healed, it's not, and at least not until now. There's always things that might be stimulated again, but the time, the duration I'm in a certain state and how intense the pain is, and how long I stay and circulate around it, it just all becomes shorter. So if I react in a certain way, I'm more aware of, oh, there's something actually going on with me, and it's not so much about the person out there. And here again, I combine nonviolent communication techniques and trauma techniques. That's a bigger chunk. And then the needs, this is something I'm just really, when I got this insight, and again, I was reading, I like to also bring in the sources I have things from. So I was reading Neville Goddard, and he has a beautiful text about speaking about it or speaking from it. And in there he says it's a huge difference if I speak about concept. I can speak about, for example, Course in Miracles. I can speak about nonviolent communication. I can speak about things. So I'm kind of the teacher mental way of bringing information across. And Neville said, speaking from it is completely different. Speaking from it is speaking from experience. And I'm 100% sure we can notice pretty quickly if we have someone who is speaking about, or do we have someone who is speaking from. And again, here the Dyads are very important. We learn to speak from the experience and not about it. Otherwise, we're just in a mental concept. And combining it again with the needs, what is the core in nonviolent communication. We all have needs. That's how I learned. But what I learned through the teaching of Neville Goddard is I don't have needs. I am the need. So, for example, needs are freedom, love, compassion, awareness, all this. It's not something I have. In my deepest understanding, I am. I am love. I am truth. I am freedom. And that's when I'm coming from that space. It's something like the last step, which we have in nonviolent communication is, so if I have needs, so what can I do, or what can someone else do to help me fulfill these needs? And in my understanding, when I say spiritual NVC, there's nothing about how to have it done to me or more through me. It's more, if I have a need for, or if I am love, if I am freedom, then the last part is, how do I bring myself into the world as the love who I am? How do I bring myself into manifestation as the compassion I am? And all these tools, Dyads, the healing from trauma, and the awareness and integration of who I am, I become more and more of who I am. And that's how that's how I manifest into the world. And I just really, really enjoy this way. And I'm kind of, that was given to me, how to bring this into the world, because it's a beautiful combination of what I learned from nonviolent communication, from my spiritual background, from the Dyad practice, and also the whole trauma information integration practice. So it's a beautiful piece of, or how do you say, a body of work that can.
I just sort of like in the Dyads, every once in a while, it's like you step into the space of timelessness. Mm-hmm. It's sort of blowing me away that you and I have been talking for about an hour. And the fact that I noticed the inner space is, well, it's time to wrap things up. And all I really have for you, Simone, is my gratitude and my love for all the ways you're showing up in the world, and for all the ways you've touched me and everyone else. I'm so grateful that you've taken this time to share this with everyone who has found their way to listen. So thank you.
And the same for me, Cyndi. It's just such a gift that you came to our global diet work, came into our lives, and basically are taking over, especially the afternoon, the writing diets. There was the intuitive writing, and it just really became such a beautiful hope for you, and I know for everyone who is joining. So I'm just really, really grateful. It's again one of those gifts that I'm not able to do this. I just had the idea. I happened to make it happen, and now there's so many people. There's almost like 18 other hosts who are making this possible for people to attend and to come and to reconnect. Maybe that's the right word.
So if you want to know more about Simone, click her link. I also invite you to check out all of the other podcasts. There's, there will be 52 podcasts in 2022, each one of them with a nugget of love and truth and something of value to you on this path and in this moment. So thank you for being here. Nothing but love and joy and gratitude for us all. Till next time.